Have you ever felt like life is just one big storm that never seems to end? Like you're caught in a downpour of problems, worries, and uncertainties with no umbrella in sight? Well, you're not alone. In fact, I think most of us have been there at some point. And what if I told you there's a place? A spiritual shelter where you can find peace, protection, and rest even when everything around you is chaos? Yep, it's not a fantasy. It's real. It's called God's shelter. Let me take you back a bit. The Bible has a ton of wisdom on this. One of the most beautiful verses about shelter comes from Psalm 91. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Just imagine that for a second. The creator of the universe, the one who spoke galaxies into existence, is your personal refuge. Pretty mindlebowing, right? Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, that sounds nice and all. But how do I practically experience the shelter? Let me be real with you. It's not about walking around like an invincible superhero with an invisible force field. No, it's far more personal and far more powerful. It begins with prayer. So, let me share a prayer you can say. Not as some magic incantation, but as a heartfelt conversation with God. Lord, I dwell in your shelter, finding refuge in your shadow. May your presence be my sanctuary, shielding me from harm. Simple, profound, life-changing. But wait, before we dive deeper, picture this. Have you ever been in a rainstorm without an umbrella? You get drenched, your phone goes haywire, your socks squish with every step, and you're shivering while others just stroll by with their colorful umbrellas like it's no big deal. That's life without God's shelter. Now, imagine having the ultimate umbrella, not some flimsy plastic one but a divine canopy that never breaks or fades. Here's the interesting part. The Bible doesn't just talk about God as shelter in poetic terms. It's very practical. Think about a house. You don't just say, I have a house, and then leave the door open while a storm rages on. You lock the doors, shut the windows, maybe turn on the heater or the air conditioner depending on the weather, and you rest. Similarly, prayer is how we close the doors, how we invite God's presence to shield us. Now, I remember this one time when I was going through a rough patch. I had bills piling up, relationship tensions, and a to-do list that seemed to grow longer by the minute. Honestly, I felt like a squirrel on a caffeine rush, running around in panic but getting nowhere. One night, completely exhausted, I sat down, closed my eyes, and just prayed simply, Lord, be my shelter tonight. And you know what happened? I felt a calmness wash over me. Not because my problems disappeared, but because in that moment, I wasn't facing them alone. God was right there. And that's the key takeaway. Prayer for shelter isn't about erasing the storm. It's about finding peace in the midst of it. Let's get a little technical for a moment, not to sound like a Bible professor, but because I love breaking things down. The word shelter in Hebrew is mokseh, which literally means a place of safety, a stronghold. In ancient times, people didn't have insurance or police to call for protection. They relied on strong cities, fortresses, and God as their ultimate protection. And here's where it gets beautiful. Psalm 46:1 says, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. It's like having a 24/7 emergency hotline to divine assistance. Okay, now let's talk about something we all can relate to: fear. Fear is probably the biggest reason we don't experience God's shelter. We tend to think, what if I'm not good enough? Or what if God doesn't hear me? But let me tell you something that flipped my perspective completely. God doesn't shelter the perfect. He shelters the hurting, the imperfect, the broken. Psalm 30:18 reminds us, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. So, next time you're feeling unworthy, just remember, God's shelter doesn't discriminate. Let me give you a real-life example. There's a story about a woman named Dana in the Bible. She was a widow living in the temple, constantly praying and fasting. Even her solitude, she trusted in God's shelter. One day, her prayers connected with a profound moment when baby Jesus was presented at the temple. She found her purpose, and more than that, she found her divine shelter in God's plan. Transitioning from history to today, I often wonder if ancient people found shelter in God's presence. Why do we hesitate today? The answer is probably simple: life is noisy. Notifications, emails, deadlines, opinions, it drowns out that still. But sheltering in prayer is where you tune out the noise and tune into the source of peace. Here's a little challenge for you. Just pause for 30 seconds right now. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and say this simple prayer. Lord, I choose to dwell in your shelter today. Shield me, guide me, and give me peace. Feels good, right? I can't stress enough how this daily habit creates a safe space within your heart. It's like setting up a spiritual firewall that protects you from doubt, fear, and despair. Let's address a common myth though. Some people think that praying for shelter means a life free from struggles. Nope, that's not how it works. It's more like having a reliable umbrella in a constant drizzle. The rain doesn't stop, but your umbrella keeps you dry. And speaking of metaphors, imagine walking through a dark forest at night. Every crack of a branch makes your heart leap, and every rustle sounds like a monster. But once you switch on your flashlight, you see the path clearly. Prayer is like turning on that flashlight, and God's shelter is the solid ground we'll walk on. Now, before I wrap up, here's the golden nugget I want you to take home. Prayer for shelter is a two-way street. It's not just about you asking for protection, but also about listening, because sometimes the most powerful shelter is simply hearing God say, I am with you. So as we conclude, I want you to reflect on this thought. Are you living in the constant anxiety of life's storms? Or are you choosing to dwell in the shelter of God, where peace prevails? If you're ready to take that step, start today. Make it simple, make it real, and most importantly, make it yours. And hey, if this video gave you peace, hope, or even just made you smile a little, please hit that like button. It really helps us reach more people who might be searching for their shelter too. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos like this. Remember, no matter how fierce the storm, there's always a divine shelter waiting for you. Just open your heart, pray, and let God's love be your umbrella. Thank you so much for watching, and may your life be filled with peace, purpose, and divine shelter.